A desert island may seem like a most inhospitable place. Hot, dry, isolated. Yet for the animals and plants that call it home, there's no other place like it in the world.
Did the French build this little berm here?
And for some, there are no other creatures like them anywhere. They're one of a kind.
Funding for The Desert Speaks was provided by Desert Program Partners, representing concerned viewers making a financial commitment to the education about and preservation of deserts, and by the Stonewall Foundation.
The Sea of Cortez contains over 900 islands, most of them chunks of Baja California that tore off when the peninsula broke away from the Mexican mainland. Reports from well back in the 20th century describe these islands as teeming with terrestrial and marine wildlife.
An ideal place to see the life that remains today is Espiritu Santo Island, not far from La Paz, the capital city of Baja California Sur. It's the most visited and one of the largest islands in the Sea of Cortez. The Arizona-Sonora Desert Museum has assembled a group of scientists to document firsthand the natural history of the island. The story begins with the movement of Earth's tectonic plates. About 30 million years ago, the Pacific tectonic plate grew tired of bashing up against the North American plate and inexplicably began moving to the northwest. About 20 million years later, what is now Baja California began tearing away from the mainland, opening up a rift that has become the Sea of Cortez, perhaps more properly known as the Gulf of California.
As the Baja Peninsula, which actually runs all the way up to Southern California, began peeling away, it basically was part of a huge tectonic event that resulted in block faulting, which is when pieces of Earth's crust rise up and become elevated. And as the peninsula peeled away, block faulting lifted up the east coast of the peninsula and also everything attached to it, which became the islands. And the islands were just pieces of debris basically left behind as the peninsula drifted to the northwest at about 2 to 3 inches a year.
A lot of people walking by here would say, just another rock outcrop. But the reality is this shows the real violent history of Baja California.
That's right. The whole history of the origin of the peninsula and the Gulf of California is laid out right here for us thanks to the erosion effects of the ocean. Look at these green mudstones we're walking on.
Yeah.
This is probably an old Miocene mud flow, an ash flow from volcanism 15 million years ago.
When the place went bonkers, I mean, it was really popping. Look at this red.
Red mudstones, green mudstones, even some browns.
So the red came first. Huge, huge eruption with massive mud flows coming down here. And then something stops, and maybe a couple million years later, the green comes in.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of it, this looks like good old ordinary sandstone.
This is probably only 1 million or 2 years old.
It's sitting on top of the old history. And thanks to the ocean then, and the volcanism.
And when that peninsula drifted away, it just dragged these islands up out of the seafloor and left them in their wake.
The trouble is, the scary thing is, it's still moving.
The violent history of the Gulf of California produces myriad habitats to the great advantage of marine organisms and to us as well. The perfect example is a solitary white rock off the northern tip of Espiritu Santo Island.
Look What is it about Isla Islote that makes it sea lion heaven?
At the beginning, probably it was very quiet. Now they get a lot of visitors. But they're very close to good fishing areas where they can catch their meal. They have big whiskers that they use to sense for their meal when they're in really dark water.
Those are extremely sensitive, right?
Extremely sensitive, yeah. The males vocalize a lot to defend their territories. You see that one? This is a young male. You see the crest on top of the head?
Oh, so that's a young guy.
That's a young guy.
He probably
Yeah.
still weighs 500 pounds. Huh?
Yeah. During the day, they relax, they rest, and then at night they go out to forage. Females that have puppies, they leave them ashore, and they come back the next morning to feed them. And these are two juveniles, probably about a year old.
These are the bachelor males. Huh?
Bachelor males. But there are also some females here.
How is the sea lion population holding up here?
It's going pretty well. They feed on different species than commercial fisheries. So apparently there is no competition, and they're doing pretty well. They live about probably close to 30, 40 years. Look at all the Sally Lightfoot crabs on the shore there. Some of them red, some of them brown.
So as they get old and mature, they turn red.
They turn red, yeah.
Siguiendo las órdenes del capitán. Sus vidas son
Sea lions and most other marine life are free to swim in the chilly waters from island to island. But terrestrial critters and plants are stuck, shipwrecked on the islands where their ancestors wound up millions of years ago.
With over 900 islands in the Sea of Cortez, this is actually one of the world's largest island archipelagos. And when you have isolated islands with species evolving independently on all of these different islands, of course, what it means is the whole diversity of the region becomes greatly enhanced, just like in the Galapagos, for example. As the peninsula drug these islands and deposited them in its wake, of course, these islands have been isolated for different lengths of time, and the ones that have been isolated the longest have the most unique endemic fauna because different species of plants and animals have actually evolved on these islands over time.
These animals and plants that wind up isolated on these little spots, there's genetic changes that are going to take place, and they're now separated from their original form. So whatever's happening on that little island is not going to be transferred back and forth to other areas. So you wind up with this animal or plant that just changes over time, and it keeps these accumulation of changes, and eventually you wind up with something that's a totally different species. It's a western whiptail.
Good sized juvenile, probably young male.
Mm-hmm. I like that color though.
Marking are not the same as what we got in Warren to Tucson
and
area.
for being a male, notice how it doesn't have any of that really dark black, like we would that chest and forelimbs. So it doesn't have that.
Those guys studying reptiles and amphibians are in herpetological heaven. The geologists have theirs, and some of us who recognize the transcendent value of plants are off in our own world.
On the islands and along the coast, a year may go by with no rain. So plants have had to adapt to that possibility, and they do it very strangely, but effectively. This is actually an ocotillo, a relative found in the Sonoran Desert, and its base is swollen. It's almost solid water. Other plants nearby do the same thing, although they're not even closely related. We have bursaras, one called copal, and one called simply torote. The bases again swell up, and we have another one related to poison ivy. Now this plant is like a tree, but it's grown in these dunes, so it's a dwarf. You call it the ciruela,
which is a plum.
Yeah, which is a plum, but it's not. And look how thick these branches are in it. It's got this desert adaptation.
And the wind probably is keeping it down like a bush.
So it can't grow big on the sand, and maybe it's got good fruits. It's weird how these dunes differ. This one is stabilized, it's got a lot of plants growing on it. And that one up ahead is active, it's got nothing. What have we got here?
Well, there's one that I know here.
Oh, devil's claw, there it is.
Beautiful yellow flower.
Yeah, and look, there's the fruits all around. Maybe they're from last year, but it's putting out flowers right now.
And there's some new buds also coming up here too.
Hey, look how well they're anchored here.
Oh.
Look at that.
So they're kind of buried in the sand.
You ever eat the seeds?
Absolutely. See, the embryo is really moist inside, and if you bite on them, you can actually feel the moisture in there.
These are probably responsible for more heart attacks than any other plant, because you're walking along kind of innocent-like, and you step on one, and you hit it right, it grabs your pant leg or your shoe, and you walk along, you think you've been bitten by a rattlesnake.
And the tips are sharp.
Well, that's how they disperse the seeds.
This one I know one similar too. It's called candelilla. It's like a candle.
They're very similar, and I'm going to very carefully just cut a piece of the tip off. And look, even before I'm in there, look at that knife. It's pretty tough, but this is a powerful purgative. I've got to wash the blade of my knife off after I do this, because just the tiniest touch is enough to upset you for a few days.
Well, there's something to say about all these milky plants, period.
Yeah, they're real protection against herbivores.
The expedition ship moves us around the island and easily becomes a launching pad for tiny craft that give us more intimacy with the coastline and what's inside.
One of the terrific things about these islands in the Gulf is that they have bays in them, so even though there might be wind out in the channels, they're fairly well protected.
That's right.
And nice.
And beautiful. And San Gabriel Bay is one of the most protected and most beautiful in all of the Gulf of California.
And look at the color of that white sand across the other side. I mean, that's not just white, that's white.
That's right, and that's because that's 99% broken up coral. Corals disappeared from San Gabriel Bay sometime after 1940, and now they seem to be coming back. That's very encouraging.
So mangroves are a real special part of the ecosystem in the Gulf, right?
And you know, the interesting thing about mangroves is they're actually not related to one another. They're all in different families,
aren't they?
Yeah.
Strange.
It's really one of the greatest examples of convergent evolution amongst the plants.
It looks as though these large frigate birds have taken advantage of the mangroves too.
Fregata magnificens is the scientific name, and fregata means like a battleship. Magnificence because they're great looking birds. They soar in the air with no effort whatsoever. They are probably the only seabird that doesn't have an oil gland. You know, all seabirds, they're waterproof because they spend a lot of time in the surface of the water or close to water, but frigate birds actually don't have an oil gland. When they want to catch fish, they fly really close to the surface of the water, and with their long beak, they try to catch a fish. But if they miss or if there's any problem and they land in the water, they're dead. You can really tell the difference between males and females and juveniles. We have the three of them here. The males are all black, and they're the ones that have the red pouch that they can inflate to attract females. And females have white chest and black head, and all the ones that you see that have white head are juveniles. They like to roost on mangroves like this or on cliffs because they are very short legs, they're very clumsy walking on land. It's really hard for them to walk on land, have a really long wingspan.
Those islands, because they were chunks, were irregular, and many of them have bays. And this one, San Gabriel, because it's not very deep, it became the ideal place for some people who decided to see if they couldn't make a little bit of money on developing the oyster trade throughout the world. The oysters here were not cultivated for eating, they were cultivated for their pearls and their shells. Rick, it looks to me as though we're paddling among some Rowan ruins. I know we're on Espiritu Santo Island in the Gulf of California, but nevertheless, it's strange.
It is very strange. I feel like I'm in Cusco, Peru, the way these rocks have been put together. But this was done in just after the turn of the century, around 1905, 1906, by a Frenchman named Gaston Vivet. And he must have brought a lot of labor out from La Paz to build this. Took him several years to build these lagoons, and this was in fact the first pearl oyster hatchery built in the New World.
And the idea then is to, with all this surface and bottom area, that he could fill it with oysters and make money out of selling the pearls, eh?
That's exactly right. And just after the turn of the 20th century, as much as 100 tons of pearl oyster shell was being shipped to Europe annually for pearl buttons and such. And there were a couple different kinds of pearls, black pearls and white pearls, that he managed to get out of this process.
And how long did it last?
It lasted just a short while, 10 or 12 years was all. And then he faced financial bankruptcy.
Do they know why they quit producing?
No, it's one of those unsolved mysteries, but even today you rarely find a pearl. I think the mangrove swamp is reclaiming Gaston's enterprise.
And once again, nature will demonstrate the folly of human works.
It takes about 7 years for a grain of sand to become a jewel inside the oyster. It takes millions of years more to develop the rock formations and layering we see on the islands.
What I see are a number of different strata on these islands. I see a basement rock that's Cretaceous, probably 100 million years or so old. And then I see some Miocene volcanic activity on top of that, maybe 15 million years or so. And that's probably when most of these islands begin to form. And then on top of that, there's actually very young rock, Pleistocene marine deposits, which tell us that at some point most of these islands were actually below sea level. Yeah, and you can actually see all three of those different levels right here on Espiritu Santo and Isla Partida. This rock surrounding us here is tuff, which is basically volcanic ash that's been compressed over time and then uplifted.
So when the ash came out, there were all kinds of bits of other things in it. It blew and then cemented here, but that cap on there is this flexible cap. I mean, it's as if it stretched down the side as it got eroded under. Look at these formations.
Incredible. That cap is very mysterious.
Yeah.
And look how it's carved out here from the wave action.
So the composition of the top layer had to have something in it, like an adhesive that held the particles together.
It's like a stalactite.
Well, you know, more like a caramel apple covering.
But if you look up at the very top of almost where the soil layer is, you can see that Pleistocene sandstone from a couple million years ago. And along some of these cliff faces where erosion's been pretty good from the sea waves and such, you can actually see the cuts down to the old Cretaceous basalts and the igneous rocks. Of course, all that was 100 million years ago. This island was part of the Puerto Vallarta area. And if you were to slide the peninsula back against the mainland, it would just fit in there like a jigsaw puzzle. So 300 or 400 miles drift in 7 to 15 million years. Breakneck speed, 3 or 4 inches a year.
The canyon here, you wouldn't know it from the ocean, but it is full of really neat trees.
A lot of canyon fig, spectacular vegetation.
And the sides must be 500 feet above us. So the plant starts up there, it sends down this
Coming all the way down to these cracks, falling.
Yeah, look, it goes over here, another 10 feet, drops down in this, somehow it gets down to water.
Do you see all the figs on the bottom though?
Oh, look, yeah. So what's going to eat this besides
probably
birds?
bats. Bats would be a good source. And think about how in the world do they get up there and get water?
Well, that's because the bats eat the fruit. They defecate up there.
The
They get
cracks.
lodges in the cracks. It rains, and then they start sending down these roots. They are remarkable trees. I bet if we were here when these are actually ripe, this place would be going crazy. This tree would be one
Birds
beehive. Foxes.
Insects and everything.
This is
Yeah, this is another one easy to remember. The name is Palo Blanco.
well, it's not very blanco here. It's not white. But this one is found, I guess, just in Baja California.
Well, obviously this canyon probably has a little more water because of the rocks. And you
Yeah.
can see here where the water flows. Do you see the erosion here? Obviously there's a lot of more moisture probably staying in little areas and little basins probably hidden.
Yeah, that would pick it up, right.
The roots
And there, look, you can see that is a lot whiter there. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you love to have been here about 15 million years ago and watched things pop?
Well, it must have been really something. You know, this is basically a 15-million-year-old volcanic ash flow we're walking through.
Yeah, a huge exhalation or sneeze, and that stuff was very wet, laid down here and probably several hundred feet thick. Imagine that would have affected the entire Earth's climate.
Since then, been completely compressed into solid rock. They call this rock tough. Seems like a good name.
Yeah, it's tough, but it's not very tough. So it's kind of weak tough. Another beetle. What is this?
This is probably an undescribed species. You know, there are so many beetles in the world, and nobody's really studied beetles on these southern Gulf islands. So here we are looking at a new species.
Dave, we're almost at the end of the trail. This last part, you're gonna like it a lot. It's like being in an amphitheater.
It is.
Natural amphitheater with a spectacular view.
The canyon is a mini desert ecosystem. On our return to the boat, as we near the beach less than a kilometer away, an entirely different system jumps out at us.
I don't know that I've ever seen such a large pack of fiddler crabs. There's actually two different species here. You see these small ones are about a half inch wide, maybe at the most. Then back beyond that pack, you see some large ones.
All right, yeah, there's you can.
Maybe an inch wide. Like a cloud of mosquitoes almost.
A swarm. God, it's eerie.
There must be 500,000 of them right here in this little area.
Here they go.
Fiddler crabs, it's all about picking a spot that the sand grains are just perfect. So they can burrow and the burrows won't collapse on them. So the males will dig the deep burrows and they'll get out and wave their big claw around. And the females will run over and jump in their hole. And that's when business gets to business.
We could hardly miss the crabs. Unlike them, the strata on a nearby island are reported to have preserved creatures for us that we could not have otherwise seen.
I'm a young guy. Here we are.
All right, good. Thanks.
Okay, a little
Good work.
slippery. This is what we've seen pictures of, but this is indeed a marine turtle. Look at this here.
How do you know it's a
You
turtle?
know, well, you can tell turtle, they've got these modified ribs. These are actually dorsally compressed ribs right here, probably 5 different ribs. And here's some vertebra.
This would have been the shell, basically.
Absolutely. And for 50 million years, they've been relatively unchanged. So it's really just a great record of what was in the past and what we have today as well. Hey, check this out. Whoa.
Whoa.
Look at right here. Look at this thing.
That's
What is that?
that's a piece of a vertebrae.
It sure does look like
And that
one,
was a
huh?
spinal cord in there.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that is great.
There's shell fossils everywhere. Look at this. Most of these look like scallops, pectins.
Hey, it helps to be a marine biologist to know these things.
Well, a lot of this stuff you wouldn't recognize without an eye for it.
Look, all these little individual mud flows here.
And that's a scallop shell. Look at the fluting on the edge of the shell right there.
It looks like it was just put here yesterday.
I don't recognize this one. I don't think this is a living species. So these are really old deposits. And look, there's another different kind of scallop, a much larger one. In fact, that's huge. Look at the size of that. These are very old deposits. This is probably 8 inches across when it was whole. I don't recognize anything that's contemporary, so I think everything that's in this sandstone is now extinct.
This is a mammalian rib. Some big mammal got thrown down here in the muds, and this formation is rich in mud that has almost no oxygen in it, perfect for making fossils.
These are such old deposits that they actually predate the Sea of Cortez formation, of course. So these are probably deposits laid down someplace on the mainland of central Mexico 100 or more million years ago. In fact, when you look at these down cuts through the sandstone layers here, you see the same thing you see in the Grand Canyon. You see a history of life on Earth, geological history of Earth that goes back more than 100 million years. Fantastic textbook lying open for us to examine.
A few million years of isolation of the Baja California Peninsula, almost 1,000 islands, and the cool waters of the Sea of Cortez combined to produce a biological diversity in the region unmatched anywhere in the world.
Espiritu Santo Island is a perfect example of the Gulf's unparalleled diversity. It has recently been afforded protected status, ensuring that what we saw here will be available for future generations.
And it's just so massive.
Look at the size of the trunk on that.
It's long been known that the Sea of Cortez contains places and things worthy of awe and admiration. What's now becoming abundantly clear is that those places also need protection. The establishment of Loreto Marine Park is part of the answer. Next time on The Desert Speaks.
Preparan las redes también los arpones, buscando curvina, tal vez tiburón.
Ya se me olvidó.
You forgot the words. All right, you're forgiven this time. It'll do.
And we can do another section.
That's sad, though. It kind of makes me, you left your sweetheart, you go now and may never return. And of course, that's the way it is in the Gulf.
Yeah.
Look at this rough water out here.
Funding for The Desert Speaks was provided by Desert Program Partners, representing concerned viewers making a financial commitment to the education about and preservation of deserts, and by the Stonewall Foundation,